first order of business is the approval of the minutes from January 2nd, or December 2nd, January 14th, and January 26th. Could I have a motion, please? Rachel? And Steve's trying to raise his hand. Thank you, Steve. Okay, any questions, comments, additions, subtractions? Anybody here in the audience or on the phones? Anyone on the phones? No? There being none, are we going to take a roll or just do
You can do voice vote for those in the room and then.
Okay, we'll do a voice roll. All those in favor in the room, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Motion carried in the room.
Gotta call out those that are on the line.
Okay, on the line, Paul.
Aye.
Eden.
That didn't sound like
Was
her.
that an aye, Eden? Okay.
The dog gets the vote now.
Okay. And Rob.
Aye.
Thank you. It was unanimous. First information item we have is monthly financial report. Randy. Gave Julie a day off.
Mr. Chairman, I noticed that with this afternoon's monthly financial report, the sheriff has brought 3 of his chief deputies with him. So if they could all be recognized, I haven't seen you guys in a long time. One just went out the door, so must be a really good one. There he is. Hey, Sheriff.
Thank you. Yes, we definitely want to recognize them, and hopefully we won't have any wild things in our information here that's going to require them. Okay, Randy, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report this month is through, well, December should be 31st. It's period 12. We don't have the period 13 transactions included in this report. Next month, we will be bringing both what we will have through period 13 for 2020 and a period 1 report for 2021. Just some high-level things to go along with what Julie included in the report. Julie couldn't be here today. She had a sudden death in her family. On the big note, most of our revenues, I'm going to concentrate on the general fund, did better than we expected. We still saw some hits to PPRT and our supplemental sales tax. Our public safety sales tax was down slightly. Some of the others, our regular sales tax was actually up. Our income tax was up slightly. Interest income was up 10%. And our property taxes, had a slight gain. On our revenue so far in the general fund, I think Julie called it out in the report, but there is $1.5 million of CURES money that we have. Just under 1.2 of that was for the general fund. Also, in 2021 for 2020, there will be some FEMA reimbursement, and then if there's any other CURES reimbursement, plus if there's some other stimulus we receive. Other than that, I'll try to answer any questions you have on this report. And then, Scott, do we want to discuss the potential LGDF reduction, or do you want to handle that, or?
Yeah, let's handle the report first, then we'll go on to that.
Okay.
Is there any questions from anybody here on the budget or on the report? No. Steve?
Right. Thanks, Randy, for filling in for Julie on this.
He does a better job.
I didn't say that, you did, so we'll leave that alone. But I guess from the general fund, I mean, it was a good end result of last year, and so I'd like to say thank you for all of the county employees and everybody who did step up and help adjust and manage through last year in the budget. So, you know, it's a positive outcome in a challenging year, so just want to kind of highlight that.
And I think the real proof will be next month when we get the 13th month in there, so. Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from those on the phone? Hearing none?
Yeah, just to expand upon what
Randy said and what Member Ricker said, you know, we'll, once we get the period 13 numbers in, which will essentially be your unaudited and mostly final 2020 numbers, we'll be looking to have a policy discussion on a couple of things in terms of looking at priorities, how that relates to strategic planning, and looking forward to that from a policy discussion standpoint. You know, at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions as well. Otherwise, we can certainly move on to the Hennepin Oaks financial report if you want, Mr. Chairman.
Fine. Any questions from anyone? Okay, let's move on to Headington Oaks financial report. And then Paul will also have a report on the accounts receivable following that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your packet are the financials through December 31st, matching the finance report. As Randy mentioned, these are through P12 and do not yet include period 13. Be happy to answer any questions you might have on those. On the accounts receivable, some updates since our last committee meeting. We've moved all the documentation for our largest hospice balance down to the state's attorney's office for review. We furthered discussions with our consultant for the review of Medicare bad debt and received a statement of work for review at the end of last week. Quite a bit of work has been going into the posting the write-offs that were approved at the December board meeting, and I've continued communication and submitted more cases to Member Daly on Medicaid, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. And then Shauna is going to give a high-level overview of the plan we've been working on for the next 4 quarters.
Any questions on this part yet? I think a lot of it will be answered when Shauna gives her report. So, Shauna, you want to give? Oh, you are. Go ahead and give your.
Get to the right page here. The 2021 financial plan in your packet should look like this. It's got the 4 different buckets. I'm just going to give a real quick overview. I do want to start off and let you know that this is a document that we'll be continuing to put in the packet, and we'll be updating periodically as we move through these processes. So that way, if there's any updates, we'll be able to highlight them in the months moving forward. And if anybody has any more specific questions, feel free to get a hold of me after the meeting, and we can definitely talk offline too about any questions or concerns that you might have. In the first quarter, and I recognize it's now the end of February, so we're nearing the end of the first quarter. But in the first quarter, just to highlight a couple of the items on here, continuing to work on the getting the write-offs posted within the software systems that the board approved in November and December. RSM, that is McGladgery. We currently utilize this accounting firm to do the Medicare and Medicaid cost reports for us. We have received a scope of work for them. They also specialize in helping organizations go in and do a Medicare bad debt evaluation. So they'll be able to help us go in and determine what is collectible versus what is not of our outstanding Medicare debts. So there's 2 phases to that process. The first, we're hoping to get started here pretty soon. I know we're going to get that down to Jenny to review that contract, and then we'll be able to get them engaged. The first is for them to go through and actually go through our books and determine what is collectible and what is not. For those items that then we are going to write off, we will include those on the Medicare cost report, and then Medicare reimburses us 63% of that dollar amount. So even if we write it off on the cost report, we will receive about 2/3 of that money back from Medicare, but there's some timelines associated with that. So RSM is going to assist us with that process so we can make sure that we get everything included on this final Medicare cost report that we will have in July. We are also, as Paul talked about earlier, working with the state's attorney's office, so we really appreciate Jenny and her team and all their help to help us go after, to help us collect some of the outstanding amounts owed from some of our vendors. And then we're also working we have some contact information to use an outside collections agency that also specializes in governmental, so Medicaid and Medicare collections processes. So, for example, we currently have a collections agency that we utilize to help collect outstanding courts fees and those types of things, but this Medicare and Medicaid billing is a little more specialized, and so there are some firms that specialize in that. And so we're working to get some scope of work from some of those folks to assist us with that as well. And then with our overall goal, and I use the phrase attempt collection because right now, just trying to determine, are we looking at the number of accounts, or are we looking at overall dollar amounts, those types of things. And some of these goals will be fine-tuned with some more specific metrics as we engage with RSM and the collections agency to really kind of hone in as to what is realistic and appropriate for those goals. Quarter 2, as I said.
Can I interject here just a
Sure.
second? The goal at the bottom where it says 10 to 15%, that's recovery plus write-off of bad debt, so it's not just recovery. So just for clarification, any of these along here, that's what they include, bad write-off. Go ahead, Sean.
No, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Quarter 2, our goal by the end of quarter 2, obviously the Medicaid cost report has to be filed by June 30th. So again, we're working with the team to get that completed as we do every year. We are anticipating that McGladrey RSM will have phase 1 of that Medicare bad debt evaluation completed, and then also phase 2, and that is we're finalizing the scope of phase 2, but phase 1 is to more identify, and phase 2 is actually go in and do those write-offs and close out those accounts. We're consistently getting billing adjustments from Medicare and Medicaid, so we wanted to be sure to include those, that as those come in, that we're getting those filed in a timely manner. And then again, with a goal of 30 to 40% of the AR through those collections in the RSM process. Quarter 3, as I said earlier, the Medicare cost reports, it's 2 separate cost reports, one with the state, one with the feds. Medicare cost report, that deadline is July 31st, so again, including the findings from RSM in that final cost report. At that point, in working with collections, we are anticipating that we will have hopefully a very good understanding of what is actually collectible from our vendors that still owe us versus what is not. And so hopefully we can get those closed out by the end of quarter 3. And then quarter 4, obviously working with the collections agency to really narrow down to where we have a very limited number of those accounts that are still open. And then working on kind of a policy discussion as to what does that look like for the final closure of the remaining accounts. If we have people that are paying us every month and are very diligent in paying us every month, but maybe have a large balance, what is the timeline that we want to look at for maybe adjusting those timelines with those outside groups? But again, I think as we work through this process, we'll be able to put some more specific metrics in there as we work with RSM and then that collections agency. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and like I said, we'll continue to update this.
From anyone around the room?
I have a question about the number of these cases that have been assigned to an attorney to do work on. How many?
Within our own within our own legal division, or
whoever is doing it. I mean, do we have outside counsel, or is it strictly the state's attorney's office?
At this point, it's strictly the state's attorney's office, but that is part of that collection agency process that we're looking at. Jody, who's our state's attorney, her office also has final say in terms of determining which collections agency we use. So right now, we are going out and looking for those groups that specialize in there, and then we're going to make a recommendation to Jenny and her team, and then get that statement of work ironed out so we can turn over more of those cases that need.
So how many have been turned over right now?
Right now, we have the one vendor in Jenny's office, and I believe that's it for right now. There's none
Okay,
that have been
so no Medicaid.
No.
Anyone on the line have a question? Easy group today. Okay, at least we have something to start working from. I'm looking forward to seeing the numbers come in each one of these quarters and updated, and we'll be getting that. At least our committee will get that on a weekly or at least our committee meetings, and we hope that we can see some progress in this. Any other comments? Okay. We are at the point of miscellaneous. Any miscellaneous at this point? Kate, yes, please.
I would just like to remind all of the board members to complete the Scott's annual evaluation survey. The deadline is coming up, and for those of you who haven't completed it by this weekend, I'll be giving you a call.
Good point. Thank you.
So the deadline again is March 1st.
Hopefully there's very few. All right. Any other comments? No? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you much.
You don't want her to call you now. Yeah, it's that last page. Oh, I'm finished. You know, you get